So when I joined Deloitte August 1st, 2016, we had a lot of discussions about the different things that are going on in the tech. Obviously, I have a research background, and so part of my job is to do research across the world with colleagues and to report back on conferences and so forth. And one of the things that struck me is that we in Deloitte have a lot of research on industries, what's happening in finance and retail and so forth, what's happening in certain functions like a CFO or a CIO or a supply chain manager. But when it comes to tech, we have trends, but we didn't really have something that covers the big changes in that space. So irrelevant of which technology we're talking about, at the end of the day, an organization needs to reap the benefits of those technologies, and then become, so what is different? And so to our opinion, these are three things. It's to create business relevant technology, to future-proof the organization and do that rapidly, as in at speed, successively, as in it should be a repetitive machine, independent of what technology we're talking about. And the most important one, it should scale. It should be designed to scale. Because you could say in hindsight that the move to ERP was a big thing. The move to internet was a huge thing. The move from fixed telephony to mobile was an even bigger one. Apps and so forth and so forth. So any CIO with a certain degree of experience will say, this is nothing new. We constantly change. And we say that's true, but on top of that, there's something else changes. It needs to be faster, it needs to be repetitive, and it needs to scale. So what we created is the 9 shifts which we think are changing the way in which you do tech. And these things more or less change independent of each other. So they're not naturally aligned to each other. Some are faster than others, some are more intrusive than others. And so it's the collective responsibility of a management team to have a good understanding of the causality between these shifts, because a lot of these shifts are beyond your control. The move to cloud and platforms is going to happen, whether you get it or like it. The move to agile ways of working is going to happen. The change of your configuration of your IT team, it's going to change. So don't just do agile or just do cloud or just do one part. Look at it holistically. And as a final remark, what a lot of CIOs, in my view, quote unquote, get wrong is that they assume to be the business. And I use the metaphor of an aircraft carrier. When you are the captain of an aircraft carrier, it is your responsibility to run the ship, to keep it safe, and to have the set of capabilities that will help you win the next war. That's your job. But which war? That's not your job. That's the executive team's job. And so the definition of what a tight ship should look like, what capabilities should the aircraft carrier have to be future-proof, is a business decision. And so we created a language to help businesses and tech teams to identify those dilemmas, to discuss them, and to jointly take responsibility for whatever decision they take. Because one of the things we learned is there is no gain without pain. If you press this one, it's going to hurt there. And you'd better understand that before you take off. So it's more the reverse. A lot of companies in their approach to digital, for good reason, have taken the customer-facing or the employee-facing part of the stack as the starting point. So hence digital is a lot about websites and apps and what have you. And that's absolutely very valuable. Having said that, when you follow the whole tech chain, for instance, of a process, an end-to-end process, or an end-to-end customer journey, then it becomes evident that there is a huge discrepancy between what on the front end is suggested as value versus what actually happens under the hood of the aircraft carrier. To give you a typical example, if you sign up for a contract for a telecom operator, in these days that's most of the time not just a mobile but it's also fixed line or internet or television and media and so forth. So it's a bundle of services. In some industries, that whole process, which touches different parts and silos in the organization, is fully digitized. So you click it, and literally in an insurance environment, I've seen within 3 seconds, you get paid. Just imagine what that means. Risk, payment, and so on, well, maybe 30 seconds, but really short time. So in the example of the telco operator or the example of an insurance company, yes, you go to a website, yes, there's an app, and then it goes underwater and it takes 2 days or 2 weeks, in some cases months, to get back to a client. So what we're talking about is the digitization of the whole firm, its ability to address new technologies, but also its ability to open up new markets with new propositions and do that fast. And I used for that also the metaphor of the aircraft carrier. You have speedboats that will allow you to test things. If they work, you put them on the platform. If they don't work, you kill them and you move on. And that's where a lot of companies that are in this, let's say, infancy phase, this digital window dressing phase, that's what they're at. The front end is really sexy, but by God, when you really poke into the firm, it's not really digital at all. And with that comes, because it's not in its design really digital, it's much more expensive. So the CIO spends a lot of his or her attention and budget and talent to what you could call the wrong part of tech. Yeah, so we see more or less 3 types of CIOs when we survey them every year. And so the first one, which is a big group but rapidly declining, is what you could call extremely focused on execution. So running a tight ship, but not really changing the ship. Right? It is a very efficient operation. It's run professionally. I gave the example of the software that is used on an airport to bring in ALS, to bring in landing app. That's thorough, well kept, very important. Then we have what you could call the business co-creators. So these are CIOs that are very close to the business. They understand the business. They facilitate the business to do the right thing. So that's where they bring in their agile teams to the business and so forth. And then there's Vanguards, and Vanguards are fundamentally different types. First of all, they're much better paid, but also they are, by the nature of what they are, in the board. To give you a bit of an idea, an average CIO, baseline CIO, would spend, according to our research, 56% on running the business operations, 26% on incremental change, and about 18% on real innovation, as in new, right? When we look at Vanguards, that division is 47% on business operations, keeping the lights on, but reducing towards 33. Incremental from 27 to 29. Innovation from 26 to 38. Which means that more than half of the IT budgets is spent on business added value and not on system of records, keeping the lights on. So Vanguards are people most of the time that originate from the business, then moved into a tech job, were CIOs for a number of years or assistants in that space, and then went into a board, most of the time in a new company, in which they have the whole stack as their responsibility. So Vanguards are by nature entrepreneurial people with a deep understanding of technology, and not technology people with some understanding of business. So niche play is actually something that happens in industries that are, for numerous reasons, incapable of changing the aircraft carrier. Right? It's too big, it's too old, it is constrained by all kinds of legislative constructions. It has an inability to change the workforce because you can't get rid of people, and so all kinds of reasons that make it difficult. And meanwhile, in a banking example, the bank is being attacked by fintechs and by others, retailers becoming banks, telcos becoming banks. So I can't wait. The mothership is too big and too complex. So I'm going to create outside of the bank a new bank, which is agile by design, cloud by design, fintech, all the fancy stuff is there, designed to scale, probably half or less of the people you need, and a tremendous capability of running the business based on real data. And so I gave some examples. So we as Deloitte, but not just Deloitte, or our colleagues also in the consulting world have helped so far 11 big banks across the world to basically create the bank, the new bank, within 1 year, including the banking license, that is supposed to kill the existing bank. We sometimes refer to them as nightmare scenario competitors. It's a strategy which starts from the premise, I'd rather do it to myself than have somebody else do it to me. Oh yes, yeah. So you see it in retailers, in some areas in telecom operators, but for instance also in parts of government. Yeah. Because they feel that the mothership is just too slow to react to these new opportunities. Because let's be also very clear about that. One part which I didn't speak about because I already had enough stage time, but is a topic that I teach on and I present to clients. It's on disruption. And so technology is a major disruptor in some industries. The funny and interesting thing is that in the West, when you talk about this topic, the standard reflex is to defend ourselves, right? We want to be defended. And it literally shows in how we describe it. You know, we are being disrupted, which is something that apparently somebody else is doing to you. If I have the same conversation in China, here's a new bundle of technologies which would allow you to do an edge play, which would allow you to go out and kill, as in attack. That's the first question. Where would you start? The ear or the leg? It's the same technology, but it's a different approach to, okay, here's a new bundle of technologies. How can I kick ass with that? That's all about entrepreneurial spirit. Thank God we have a lot of that still in the West, but and I understand we have a lot to defend, right? We are in some degrees wealthy and social state. So I get that there is a lot to be defended. On the other side, you know, some industries are not going to wait in some geographies. So for instance, in artificial intelligence, when we compare ourselves to the US and particularly to China, we're too slow. In platforms, we're not there. We're just not there. Spotify. So the world is changing rapidly. Technology is a means to do that. And so to have going back to the beginning of our conversation, to have a tight ship that is future-proof, that is inherently safe, that is scalable for those speedboats that work, that is a necessity. It's not a luxury, it is a necessity. It's a survival strategy. If you believe as a firm that what you do will be digital, you don't have an option.